Boom. Oh, wait. How's this work? There we go. How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Redman Group, episode 177. It's been about a month since I did a at-home kind of web broadcast version. Those of you who watch the channel, you probably saw a bunch of the live stream ones, the previews anyway, like 15 minutes that we did about 2 weeks ago live in Orlando, Florida. Those will be on the channel later on in the weeks and months to come as we edit the full multicam versions of those episodes. In the meantime, I'm here today, so lucky you get to hear from President Dream. I'm going to be joined today by Mr. Jeff Younger, basically speakers from the event, the recent 21 Summit, the World Manosphere Super Duper Summit. It's fucking awesome. So we're going to talk about it. So I got Jeff Younger here today. I got Paul Caldwell from the War Room, Steve from the Man Mindset, and Tony Bruno should be on in just a minute as well. So without further ado, please let me welcome to today's stream, Jeff Younger, Steve Williams, Paul Caldwell. Whoa. There we go. How you doing, boys?
Howdy.
Hey, y'all all three of you are from Texas. That's funny. Bunch of fucking Texans invading my show.
Yeah, well, when the revolution happens, that's where it'll come from.
Yeah.
Hey, boys.
Paul, your audio is a bit low. I could try boosting it.
How's it now?
A little better.
That's a lot better, yeah.
Cool.
Good now?
Yeah.
All right.
So first things first, I've talked to you guys a little bit, since the event here and there, but I've been kind of like in hibernation, trying to just recuperate, recover. So I want to know, what are your basic thoughts on the event that you just experienced? Paul, you were new. Jeff and Steve, you had seen the events before, so you kind of have a different perspective. Paul, if you don't mind, I'd like you to kickstart what you thought about the event.
Well, like I said in my post, man, it was a lot different than what I expected, because I think mainly because of all the guys that have come out to be fraudulent. There's been in the past, there's been some clowns that speak, and I've poked at a couple of them, and I thought that there was going to be some of that, and it was different. It was a lot different, and the speeches that I sat through, I at no point wanted to get up and go. I mean, that was one thing I watched a lot of these guys online, and I didn't expect that I would want to sit and listen to them talk. But one of the biggest takeaways for me was being able to sit afterwards, after the dinner was over, after all the obligations were done. We got to sit in the back as men, and that I haven't had that. Most of my guys that rooted my veterans program have moved. They've found love, found lives away from Texas, and so that camaraderie that was there, man, was fucking. It was palpable, man. There were so many different conversations going on, but they were deep, man. Everybody was talking about whatever they were passionate about, and it was transformative, man. I spent a lot of time with Steve. Steve showed me a bunch of shit that I didn't see for myself. Honestly, dude, if I'm gonna cut all the bullshit, one of the biggest things for me was realizing that I needed to surround myself with men that moved me the way that I move people on my channel. Hearing Jeff talking to Steve, just the brief conversations with Coach Greg, Elliot Hulse, Ian Smith, like talking to those dudes, man. That's why I haven't made any content since I've been home. I've been busting my fucking ass getting my shit together because, me and Elliot, we threw an idea out, whether that sticks or not, no factor. I'm doing this shit regardless. And so I've been doing things on my property. Like I got 5 of me, talking to Steve and watching how Steve, Steve's a hustler. I'm a hustler, but there's levels, dude. And I tell people, if you're the most whatever in your group, you need to find a new fucking group. And going to that summit, talking to these men, spending time. I went down, one of the things, I went down to get my 100 burpees out of the way, and Jeff and John and these dudes were down there with focus mitts. And I was like, this is fucking dope, man. I'm used to going and being the only dude that's doing what needs to be done. And I was sick. I sat next to old Sniffles during dinner, and I got sick.
Oh, Richard Grannon.
Yeah, I sat next to him at dinner. I thought he was just hungover or something. I did not have any idea he was sick until Friday. And I woke up feeling like shit. And I was like, dude. And I started talking to him, like, dude, were you sick? Oh, no, it was just a little something. Like, This is more than a little something, dude. We sat next to each other, and I'm struggling, but going down there and seeing these dudes, I wanted to play with them, but I barely had the energy to do what I had to do. But seeing these dudes all, Steve is a vampire. He goes and he's a fucking grinder. And I thought I was taking care of my business. These motherfuckers made me realize, dude, there's a lot of juice left in that squeeze. And so for the past 2 weeks, man, I've been grinding my ass off, getting my website dialed in. My main thing is I'm a trainer. I turn nerds into badasses. I turn pussies into monsters. And I don't sell that I don't say anything about that on my channel. And I'm sitting there listening, and then Wes Watson is crazy ass. I'm watching him. I'm like, why are you afraid to throw your hat in the ring? All these dudes are doing what they're doing, and you're talking about shit that you're still learning yourself. So my biggest takeaway was you've got to surround yourself with men that make you look at yourself and see the inner bitch in you, and you make you go home. All these dudes that are talking shit about the summit, all these dudes that are talking about closets, these are the real homosexuals. These dudes are talking about, oh, you going to touch your knees at a summit. Those are fucking losers that don't do shit in life, that will never do shit in life because they want to chase bitches that use them, hang around loser dudes that applaud them being losers, and they never want to go around people that go, have you taken a look at yourself? You know what I mean? No one told me that directly, but fucking A, man, talking to these men, hanging around with these men, smoking cigars and having deep conversations about the truth with these men, that unlocks boxes that unlocks shit that a lot of us suppress. And so once I got healed up from the flight home, and it took me about a week to get myself back dialed in, but man, if I couldn't walk, I was crawling. Still went to train, and I didn't miss a beat. But it was like there's a laser beam focus. So my biggest takeaway was these dudes need this. And the summit, for whatever it's been in the past, whatever negativity people can see, where it's going, from my perspective, I don't endorse shit that I don't believe in. From supplements, I've never done that. From when I was racing as a professional, I got offers to endorse stuff that I didn't believe in. I'm not going to take that shit. I'm not going to hold up your bottle. Doesn't matter what you give me. If I don't believe it, I ain't selling it. I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't believe it. This shit, dude, I was a speaker and I came away with a bunch of benefits. So I can go on and on, but these dudes probably got something else to say, man. I'm still stoked, bro. It's 2 weeks later and I'm still on fire.
I love it. I love it, Paul. There's a lot to unpack there, but before we get into any more with Jeff and Steve, I want to pop on Tony Bruno to the stream.
Guys.
What's up, Tony Bruno?
What's up, P?
Tony, you got to hear a lot of that, right? I saw you in the backstage.
I did. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Paul, what I got from you is that you got a lot of organic benefits from it, even if it wasn't explicit. Things that were important to you to happen naturally, just being there as a speaker. So that's cool as fuck. Yeah. I want to go to Steve and Jeff before we get to Tony. Steve, you've seen the events for many years since 2019. What did you see this year that was different or better?
Well, you always up in they always up in things, man. You're just not complacent, and you're pushing everybody to be better men, even the speakers. Come right, come correct, and stuff like that. And I think that right instead of like what Paul was saying, man, people don't even understand and see the depth of the passion, love, desire that you have, not only for 21 Studios, but for everybody in there to get the information that they need. You've broken it down. You've helped women. You're helping people that want to get married. You're helping guys that want to learn how to be better men. So it's just it just gets better and better, man. It just, because I mean, you pick what I call right people for right moments, and even those that you picked before that became a wrong moment was the right moment at that time, in my opinion. So you're always making smart, very what we call tactical, great moves to show these guys different types of individuals. We all are different races, ages, but we all speak one language, and that's manhood. So it's just the same thing, brother.
Yeah, Steve, that actually reminds me of what you're saying there. You called it tactical, but Jeff Younger, when he introduced me at the 21 convention from a State of the Manosphere, Jeff commented on two things about me: my deep passion for honor, and I
Yes.
strive to bring that to myself, and then as aggressively as I can in culture and like restore it, but also a fierce commitment to rationality. And this was surprising to me. I had no idea Jeff was going to say this stuff. It was really cool to see, especially on video when you can pay more attention to it. In
Right.
real life, you're standing offside on the stage. You guys will go through this. You're like, it's like a fight you're about to go into. You're about to walk up on a stage and you got to fight for what you believe in.
Yes.
But the rationality comment, it reminds me of what you said, Steve, that in my view, what I do with rationality is it's always a commitment to the best of what you know. It's a commitment to act on the total sum of what you know, the total sum of your knowledge to the best of your ability.
Yes.
And that means, like you said, I'm making the best decisions I can every year in that moment.
Yes.
And then if I got to change course in the future, then that's what I got to do as well.
That's what men do. Change course.
Yeah.
We're never one way. We're a million or infinite
Yeah.
amount of ways. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I think people confuse rationality with like perfectionism, which is just stupid. It's always making the best decision you can on the total facts of what you know.
Yes.
And this is what I even have with the respect I have for religious people, Christians and like whatnot, like Jeff. You believe that the Bible is a source of knowledge, and therefore you need to act on it. So this to me is rational, even if I disagree. That's a much wider discussion, but that's one of the reasons I respect people who hold deep religious convictions, is because you're acting on what you know and what you believe is true. That I disagree with, there's something that's not really relevant to my view of rationality. So anyway, I'll shut up. But Jeff, I'd love to hear your comments about
That's an
the event.
interesting comment because, and I'm just wrapping my head around it right now. What you're saying captures something I've never really been able to put into words well. There's a method of living. There's a way of living,
Mm-hmm.
which is what is respectable. The starting points of your thinking might be different. Everybody has different historical exigencies. They come from different places, but the
Mhm.
method by which they interpret and rationally understand the world and
Mhm.
act in the world, that method is recognizable. If you went to Japan, you could recognize a masculine man in Japan, because he would have that same method of dealing with the world from like totally different cultural positions. And you would instinctively know that this is somebody you could deal with, and you could deal with in an honorable way because he walks the way you walk, even though it may be on a different road, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed at the convention this time, I think it started initially more about social things, really more about individual social things.
Mm-hmm.
It expanded to wider society and issues around boys and men.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the last two sessions, it's really started looking at now how do we understand our place in society, and we understand what we have to do. Now, how do we start exerting power
Yeah.
to make that happen? I call that political. It's not really political. It's more than that, but exerting power in the world. And I predict, Anthony, that the next two sessions will take us into the economic world. It's for us to talk about how we're going to not only exert power, but build a world and institutions that can stabilize and create the world we want for future generations, not just us.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the 21 Convention is so important. It's an institution that will outlive all of us, that young men will take forward and take this wisdom forward. And if I had to explain it to people who've never been, we may have people watching who've never been to 21 Convention. First time I went, I said, well, this is for men of action, men who want to become men of action. And then when I attended, I realized, no, this is for thinking men of action, rational men of action. And now after my last attendance, I'm even taking it further, and I'm saying, no, it's thinking men of action informed by wisdom. And that's the depth that I think Paul was talking about. There is an intellectual depth, but it's not superficial. Men act on it.
Yeah.
And the best time I had, though, was out there throwing some punches out there with Paul. Paul was out there just knocking out burpees, doing some kickboxing, showing us some tricks. And we were just all out there having fun before dinner. I mean, we just went out boxing. Just spontaneously, people wanted to go out and box. So it's really truly a place where thinking men of action come to be men among men.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jeff. And it brings me to a follow-up question, but that I'd planned, but I think you've already covered it, but I'll bring it up anyway. I think the one criticism you had of your experience last year in 2021 is you said you wish there was more action, or you wish there
Yes.
was more pushes to action, might
Yes.
be the way you described it. So did you see that change, or did you see that improve from 2021 to 2022?
Definitely. All the speakers.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, with Paul and Steve, 100% is about action. Like their whole talks were about go do something. Michael Foster gave an interesting presentation where he just talked about his family and the struggles he had with his family, and it was an implicit call to, go out and have a family and create the army of the future.
Yeah.
And he was showing how to do it. I really think the whole focus changed, and I think the future is bright because of that.
A woman.
Hey, well,
And one more thing, Jeff, on your earlier comments when you first started speaking on the monologue, I think a lot of what you were describing is what Steve just described himself as the language of manhood. I think is what Steve said. And across cultures and across the whole summit, the convention that we do. And it's that, I think that's fundamentally what the attendees and the speakers bring to the table. It's what we attract, and it's what I want at the events. And then it repels people who are not sufficiently committed to that, right?
Yeah.
Because there's thresholds to this, right? How much action do you want to take? And Jeff, you're like at 10-10, and I'm like, a woman, let's fucking do that.
Let's do it.
Let's
It's
go.
interesting. English is somewhat of a, I really buy into von Humboldt's thesis that language reflects cultural commitments. So you look at English, and we say things like, well, by the time you get there, I will have been there for 10 hours. People in other languages don't say things like that. They just use simple past, present, and future. If you talk to Spanish speakers, Japanese speakers, English has a very specific orientation towards time, right? And that reflects some past cultural commitment into people as they were developing the language. But one of the things that we have a problem with, I think, in English is there's no good way to describe processes. It's a very noun-centric way of thinking. In Japanese, adjectives are verbs. We can't do that in English. Everything's thought of as verbs. So we don't have a way of talking about ways of doing things very well. It's hard for us to talk about those things. And I think a lot of the challenge we face in communicating the way of men is that our language, in some sense, isn't really made for it very well. So it's best done by example. And I think Steve and Paul just were great examples for us at the convention.
Hell yeah. Tony, let's go to you. You've seen the convention since 2018. You've seen many examples of it. What have you seen this year, and how do you think it's changed since you first saw it, or the evolution basically year to year?
I think it's the quality of men that every year it gets better and better. Guys are really just wanting to do something in their life, and that's why they're there. I also think that I don't want to say there was somewhat of an echo chamber, because I think when you have a lot of the same speakers speaking about the same things, it becomes an echo chamber. And it's definitely not an echo chamber anymore, that's for sure. Not that it was before, but I think that the diversity of guys speaking on different topics was real important. And I know that you like to have different speakers talk about different things, and I think that's really important. And one thing I do want to give a shout out to is the volunteers that showed up this year. It seems like every year we have our regular volunteers like myself, but just the quality of the volunteers this year and how smooth the whole system ran, it was pretty much flawless. Unlike I've seen before, there's always some blips here and there in the production, but it was as smooth as you could go. I mean, it just, big shout out. Yeah, big shout out to the volunteers this year. There was no, everything just went so smooth. There was no, there wasn't any interruptions in the force field, we'll say. So
one of the things when I was in the Marine Corps, the first thing they teach you is show your ass up on time and get your job done on time.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps just teaches you that by paying. If you don't do it, then you're going to suffer, and you're going to suffer a long time. I mean, they'll make you suffer for 24 straight hours and no sleep until you can show up on time. Then you got to show up on time and get your work done on time. These are the two fundamental things you have to get through. So, I mean, maybe 21 convention is having an effect on these volunteers, and we're seeing the transformative effects in the production itself.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
for
interesting when I think about
volunteers too, one thing, like if anybody wants to volunteer in the future, it's literally like getting a backstage pass to a
Yeah.
conference. I mean, you're seeing the inner workings, you're a part of it. You have more interaction with the speakers and attendees than
100%.
you would as just an attendee. So
Yeah.
anybody looking to volunteer next year, man, go for it. It's quite an experience. So,
Yeah, I was really happy with the volunteers this year. I mean, the staff, the volunteers.
Amazing.
Tony's kind of this hybrid between staff and volunteers because he's so central to corralling the speakers and moving you guys where you need to be. We call you speaker liaison. Is his official title. But I was very happy with it all. I mean,
I just call him a friend. He's a good man.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the volunteers has killed it, and that might be in part because we've done the same venue for 3 years in a row, and I might change that next year. We'll see.
Okay.
Every year I kind of look at that, but that I think helped the volunteers because they'd been there for a couple years in a row in some cases, and it was just like they knew exactly where everything was, exactly where they needed to be, exactly where they needed to go, exactly what they needed to do, and we helped instruct them with that, and everything. I guess I have people that try to, shit on what I do and hate me and this and that. Not just feminists either, but people even in the manosphere. But I think the reality is I've done it I've grinded for 16 years. This is a 16-year anniversary of 21 Studios events.
Right.
And that just has slowly, I didn't, even 3, 4, 5 years in, I didn't really understand that I was getting incrementally better just through blunt, brutal, brute force, one after another, when each event,
Right.
each event riding on the success of the past events. And I think finally I'm starting to see the fruits of that more and more every year. Even running 3 events at one time, that was very intimidating when we started that in 2020 because of COVID. And now I can just, even with the volunteers and the staff and the speakers, and like, it's just, it's amazing to see it grow like that over the years. And you guys then flow between the events. Some of you, like Jeff, spoke at all 3. Someone like Steve spoke at 2.
Yeah.
And everybody's just going where they need to go. And it's beautiful to see it. And I'm really proud of it. And it's fucking hard. And I think that's why people hate it, because these bums who want to like leech off of it, they can't, because it just takes 15 or 16 years of hard work to figure it out. Or you'd have to hire someone from outside the manosphere industry and pay them like $50,000 to put something like this together for you, which they're just not going to do. So it's like this obstacle that they can't overcome, and they don't want to acknowledge it, and so they just want to like bitch about it. That's what Paul was referring to, I think, in part earlier in the show. It just takes, whatever your craft is, whatever your career is in life, it takes, when you do it for decades, you just get better and better at it, and then people get pissy about it because they want to steal that, or they want to cheat, they want to have a shortcut.
One thing I'll say is true about 21 is when you meet somebody in person like Paul, you see a lot of these streams with these, I'll call them the LARPing avatars. And when you meet somebody in person, like, you have no choice, but their mask is gone in person. So like somebody like Paul, especially, man, he is who he says he is, and he's nothing else. He absolutely is genuine. And that's the difference of meeting somebody like that. There's so much LARPing going on in these spaces that, now I know why that a lot of these guys don't show their faces. And because the LARPing is just incredible. But, when you're at an event like this, there is no mask. You can't hide. You can't do it.
Yeah.
It would be cool if these guys who had so much to say, they're probably too broke to show up to the event, but that's cool if they would show up. I mean, it's not even about the speakers. If you got so much to say, if you're so bold and you got so many opinions, how come nobody wants to fucking hear them except for the losers you're talking to? You know what I mean? It's like all it is. And then they talk shit about like this dude that's in the comments. It's funny. These dudes watch. And then they're like, oh, look at you guys on Saturday morning. Like, well, dude, you're watching, you fucking loser. Get out of your mom's bedroom and go do some shit. And it's kind of crazy because Mike Tyson said it a while back. the social media and the internet has made people way too fucking comfortable talking shit.
Yeah.
People have gotten way too comfortable saying stuff because they know they're not going to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
I don't live my life like that. I won't say anything that I won't say twice. If I say it over here, I'm going to say it when I see you. But
Mhm.
so many of these dudes that have something to say, but that's the community though. That's the biggest population of the males in America for sure are pussies. And you don't want to listen to someone tell you you're a pussy, stop being one, stand up and own your shit. It's easier to go, oh yeah, you got to be 6'1" and you got to be super good looking like this guy, showing pictures of dudes. Like that's what these guys are doing. And then they talk about us. Like there's not one single thing that I say to people that's not based in some form of reality as a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really crazy that there's so many people, like there's the guys that are focused on all of the negative. There's more of them than there are us. We are outnumbered big time because it's easier for these guys to go the male feminist route and say the same things that the women say, like the DJ Academics thing on Fresh and Fit last week or so. That is more poetry about what the manosphere is. Bulldog had it right on one thing. It is full of bitches. This
Bullfrog.
Bullfrog. Yeah, Bullfrog had it. He had it dialed. This space is full of weak dudes, and they get together and they clap their little seal hands together for one another while they're jerking each other off, and it's almost comical. But on the shallow part of me, the Betty part of me, really wishes that these dudes would show up where we're at and talk that shit. You know what I mean? Like, please do that.
So this is one thing I think that 21 Summit is my intention with it, and I think it slowly does that over time. I'm trying to push the manosphere and the men in it in this direction of masculinity. When I declared in 2019 the presidency thing, I actually declared a crisis of masculinity in the manosphere, and people assumed maybe that was a joke or tongue-in-cheek, but I wasn't kidding. And that's been an ongoing crisis, so to speak, for a long time. So the event, though, is like the cream of the crop. It's the best guys in the space who actually take the time and the effort and the investment to show up in real life. Whereas, as you've seen, it's just like this super awesome, super fun, super educational experience that motivates guys through the roof. Almost every guy I talk to that comes back, he comes back because he lost 30 or 40 pounds and kept it off now. One guy I talked to said and this was strange to me because we don't really have a lot of talks about career and like money. Maybe we should, but we just don't. He said that he came in 2019 and he came back this year because he tripled the amount of money he makes. He tripled his income every year since. And I'm like, number one, fucking that's awesome. Good for you, man. Number two, I'm like, that's just crazy to me because there was not even a speech really that addressed that issue. It wasn't like losing weight. We have some speakers on fitness, but these dudes are having auxiliary benefits or whatever you call it, side effects that are really intense. And they fucking love it. And then they come back and they're like, this event changed my life. Like, how can I'm coming back again and again and again. A couple guys want to buy lifetime tickets now, or they just get a golden ticket and they just come forever. So it's like, fuck yeah, man.
Another thing I noticed too was that it seemed like this year, especially, there was a lot of guys that do combat sports, a lot. And a lot of talk was about combat sports, talking with Jeff about boxing and judo and talking with Paul. And I thought that was really cool because I think that is a big part of masculinity. It's knowing how to fight, knowing how to protect yourself. And just the amount of guys that were into combat sports this year was probably a lot more than it's been in the past years. So I thought that was
that's historically been the path to learning how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to ancient Babylonians, wrestling, boxing, even for men who were less physically capable, being archers, engaging in those kinds of things, which back then was what we would call today shooting sports.
Mm-hmm.
This was the way forward. By the way, before I forget, Paul, today at 4 p.m. in Flower Mound, I'm doing a first class in combat blade work.
Okay.
And I didn't have your email, so I want to invite you to it. So shoot me a text when we're done. I've got some guys from the Secret Service coming. I got some people coming, so you'll be very welcome.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
there was something interesting that you guys mentioned, which and I love to hear this. It's been 16 years. You've learned by doing this. You've gotten better. What it shows is that there's no secret knowledge. You're not going to get some secret knowledge and then figure out how to be super successful.
Mhm.
What it really is about is having the courage to just go try and do it, and you'll learn when you start doing it, right? And that requires a certain humility. We don't often talk about that when we talk about masculinity, but it requires a certain humility. Paul was talking about, these guys won't turn up and talk some shit. I mean, go into any kickboxing gym, go into a Thai boxing gym, go into my boxing gym, nobody's talking shit. Because I'll tell you what, there's always somebody there that can beat your ass down. I don't give a shit who you are. You will have an off day, and somebody will beat your ass down. Nobody ever talks shit. They're all humble. They only show their power by actions. Their words don't show their power, right? In fact, their words are always going to underplay their power because they like to get the sneak jump on you, right? So there's always a certain understatement to real masculinity and an underlying power that is visible in people. And it's because men learn by doing things. They don't sit around and wonder, how do I get perfect knowledge before I go try it? I have my idea, I'm going to go try it, and I'm going to learn while I'm doing it. And that's true of writing. Author Quan Lee talks about this when he talks about art. You don't like read books and then learn how to do art and then you start becoming a painter. You know what you do to become a painter? You just start painting. And all your shit's going to suck. It's just like entering a boxing ring. You're just going to get hit all the time. But eventually, you're not going to get hit all the time. And eventually, your painting is going to look awesome. And eventually, you get so good that you don't have to copy other painters anymore. You have your own style. You have your own style of boxing. You have your own style of doing business. Anthony has, I believe, a very unique style of management when he's at the conference. He's a man who is able to generate the willing obedience of people around him. So he doesn't have to be super directive. Things are taken care of before their problems ever even occur. Now, these are things that are really indicative of men of mastery. And I think just to be around people like that for 4 days is worth the price of admission.
Yeah, I love it. Being around the convention every year it's a super intense period of time for me for 1,000 different reasons. The work, the 16 years of history or whatever it happens to be that year, the camaraderie of it, the emotional impact, the emotional intensity, the professionalism required of me to do what you're saying, to direct people in these different ways, but also be hands off, get the compliance I need to get the work done on time and in the best way possible to get everything right. And then if there's something slips through, to fix it as quickly as possible, whatever the case is. So yeah, it's just a huge whirlwind of stuff for me. That's why it takes me like weeks to recover. Even last night, I was tired at like 10 p.m., which is crazy for me. Like I'm used to being up to like 1, 2 in the morning a lot of the time. Not that that's a good idea, but I was like, I felt like an old man. I'm like, it's 10 o'clock and I'm like, it felt like 1.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm looking at my watch, like, what the fuck? And I didn't do anything. I worked out on, was it Thursday? So yesterday wasn't even anything physically stressful. I'm just like fucking tired. And it's a good tired though. Like I feel like I accomplished a shit ton by getting to that point and being around you guys and just bouncing off you guys.
And maybe reversing course, this applies even to the PUA dating stuff that used to be kind of the focus of this thing. My dad gave me the best dating advice ever when I was a teenager. I'm glad I listened to it. He said, don't date. Don't ever date. He said, have an interesting and exciting life and invite those bitches in that are worthy. You're going to do it anyway. You're going to go skydiving. You're going to climb that mountain. You're going to go fishing. You're going to go camping. You're going to do what you're going to do. You're going to have an interesting, exciting life. And all these bitches are going to want to be in it.
Yeah.
Men put the emphasis the opposite way. They thought they wanted secret knowledge to figure out how to get a date or something, get a girl to sleep with them or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the best thing to do, man, is to be a badass in life, and then the women just come to you.
Yeah. It's really interesting you bring this up, Jeff, because there's an old term, and it's not, you might know more about it. It's called Gnosticism. I think it was used in Christianity for some reasons.
It's one of the earliest heresies, yeah.
But I've heard it used in a different way. and they were giving credit to the Christian history of this term, but
Yes.
it basically had to do with secret knowledge, is how they were using it anyway,
Right.
and how misguided this was. And
Yes.
and unfortunately in the manosphere, this is a huge problem.
It's a huge problem.
And maybe Steve has some thoughts on it, but these dudes looking for that, they really have been for decades looking for
Yes.
that magic pill and that secret knowledge, and it makes them feel powerful when they get it.
know.
But it's an illusion of power.
That
Like
was
they
the
don't
whole
really
thing.
have it.
My whole presentation was against this. That was my whole
Okay.
presentation this year. Yeah. Steve, what you got?
Yeah, no, it was. It seems like I talked about the fish in the fish tank. A lot of even the fish in the fish tank thinks it's free, but it's confined by the fish tank. And unfortunately, what a lot of these guys' mindsets are is that they think they're actually free. They think they're actually doing things when they're doing really nothing. They're being confined by how they see the world and how they see people seeing them and things like that.
Wow,
So
that's true. That's
yeah,
true.
so that's why I always tell, and what we teach all of us in the analogy I was telling the guys is that we teach them to be the one holding the fish tank versus being the fish in the tank. So, it's just so many layers of game that people have to learn about. But, like I say before, like Paul was saying, even in the room, I mean, people just don't want to learn, so they don't want anyone else to grow. They don't want anyone else to learn, But at the end of the day, everybody can't be a winner. I mean, there's got to be guys in the loser table. It's just how it is.
Yeah, it's like competition works. Our whole culture has forgotten that with all the participation trophies and shit like that. Even when I was a kid, that started becoming a thing, and it was weird because it was new for us. Like in the late '90s and 2000s with sports, this participation trophy shit. I remember
They're the same size as the first place trophy. They're the
Yeah.
same size because you don't want the losers to feel any kind of way. So the first place
Yeah.
trophy looks exactly like the "I suck at what I just did" trophy.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
And you know what came along with that really sucks too is because everybody's getting a trophy. We feel like even the spectators are just as worthy. Like I watched a rugby match last week, and this is a beginning team. They're just starting their club, and they just got their ass kicked. It's a very high scoring rugby game. Rugby is notoriously low scoring, right? It was very high scoring. They got their ass whipped. They had, they scored 0 points. But after it was done, nobody has any right to criticize them. Just watching the game. If you weren't on the field, there's no right to criticize those people on the field, man. Right? So all those guys, I bought all those guys beers. Right? They got down there and they fought one of the best rugby teams in this area and got their ass kicked and held in there. They fought to the bitter end, right? There's respect even for men who lose if they fight honorably, if they're attempting to achieve something honorable by worthy means, right? Mm-hmm. It's the sons of bitches that aren't trying to do anything that seem to do all the criticizing.
Yep.
And that's what came along with this participation trophy stuff that we don't talk about, right? Yeah, we're not giving the glory and honor to the winner, but we're also enabling spectators, just mere spectators, to think that there's some big shits and can talk shit about people when they never even got on the field.
Yeah.
We talk about my team. We lost. Like, but you don't play for the Cowboys.
You don't play for the Cowboys. What are you talking about?
You never even played football in high school.
Yeah.
We're talking about my team.
Yeah.
Because you bought some other man's
20 pounds and eat 10 pounds of bacon every morning.
Fucking Texans, man. Yeah, just a quick side note on this. When I was a kid, the first participation trophy I ever saw was in the year 2000, and it was for my first year playing football, 7th grade. We went 0-10. We lost every game. It was fucking terrible. We ended up we went 10-0 in my high school year 2 years later, so that was flawless. But the first year as Pop Warner, we literally lost every fucking game. Sometimes scoring 0. It was terrible, right? It was so bad. Yeah, so what was funny is we still got a trophy, and this is when they started doling these out, the year 2000, and we were holding these trophies like, even when we were kids, we're like, this is stupid. We don't really want this, but
yes,
we're going to take it because our parents will get mad at us or something. But one of the kids actually thought, it said, it had the year on it, 20 and then 00 on the right. And this kid actually thought, he's like, hey, it's our record on it. And we're like, no, man, that's just the year, dude. Like, that's not the record. That just is just coincidental. Yeah, dude, it was fucking bad, man. Yeah. But
That sounds like a character
Anyway.
building year there, man.
yeah, my first game we lost, I was like, 12 years old. I cried, man. It was so heartbreaking to lose. I mean, that was, it's very young, but it was a lot of kids did because it was so brutal. We fought so hard, we practiced so hard, and then just fucking got demolished by some other team. I mean, kids at that age, yeah, it's just like your whole world, winning this game or losing it, and just it's completely lost. After that, everybody stopped, but the first time was pretty rough.
Yeah, but you got better. Man. You got better.
Yeah, we did. We did.
One thing I do want to bring up is every year I kind of think of a breakout speaker, and I've got a couple of them this year. One is definitely Paul Caldwell, for sure. And I don't get a chance to watch many speeches, of course. And Paul was intense. He was a little nervous at first. But
The second one was like 8 Mile, man. Feel like Eminem.
But yeah, as far as like breakout speakers, I want to give Paul a big shout out.
Thank you, dude.
I also want to give Zan Perion a big shout out because I think I looked at a little bit of his content before, and I think Zan, this is what I do when I do get a chance to go into a speech. I look at the reaction of the attendees, and you could see if they're looking down or they're writing or they're just so focused when a speaker is up there. And to me, the reaction of the attendees is really, really important. I know when Steve is on stage, guys are just laser focused on what he's saying. He can relate to people. But same thing with Paul and everybody else. I'm not downplaying anybody else's speech. But there was also another breakout I would call would be Michael Foster and Brian Suave's church. We had to actually, if you remember, we had to, I think, postpone or set back the first speeches because like most of the guys were in church, which was wild. But I consider that a breakout too. I mean, it shows you what guys, they didn't have to get up early on a Sunday morning, but they did to go see these guys speak. And I say it was a different kind of church. It was definitely, I wouldn't say it was probably typical Michael Foster. Maybe not. I could be wrong but this church was devoted to men and masculinity. And I think it was, guys were really digging it. But yeah, breakout speakers and attendees' reactions is what I look for. So,
yeah,
There was
I'm looking
something
forward to
about
all
Zan and Foster's speech that was notable to me. Both of them were deep reflections on mistakes they had made and how they learned from that mistake and were able to generate something from it. And that's something you don't often hear in this space is people admitting mistakes. And that's part of that humility I was talking about, right? Here's what went wrong. Here's what I did about it. Here's why that didn't work. Here's why that didn't work. Here's why that didn't work. Finally, this worked, right? Just exemplifying the relentless character of masculinity, right? Those two are very interesting, particularly Zan, who was basically saying that we made a mistake for 20 years when I was doing this stuff. I made a 20-year mistake, and I've come around to a different point of view, and that was really remarkable. What an amazing speech that was.
That was Zan's speech at the Blue Room, Patriarch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
and you can tell also like when a speaker gets out of his speech and then guys are basically surrounding him and asking questions, that's a good telltale sign that he's really reached somebody when he was talking. You know, so that's another thing that I noticed doing what I do.
Yeah, I had so much fun at the event too, guys. Just running around. For me, it's a huge challenge. Like there's elements of more I don't know what we'd call it, simple fun. Like I did see Arthur Quan Lee and Jeff boxing, messing around there outside one day, and which was hilarious to me later because I talked to Arthur Quan Lee about it later, and he does something Jeet Kune Do or something. Judo.
He's good at it too, by the way.
Well, honestly, Jeff, he was intimidated by you talking to him later. Not scared of you, but he was like,
he's a young man.
He's like 31 years old. He's younger than I thought, but he's a buff built dude, and he trains, and he's like, yeah, gee, Jeff,
Long, man. Jeff is a long dude. If you're gonna engage Jeff, that motherfucker can hit you from way over. He can hit you from where he's at right now.
Yeah.
I was throwing some punches, man. I was, no doubt about it.
But that's hilarious to me because Jeff, you're almost twice the age of Arthur Conley. You're
I'm pushing
58 or
60,
50.
man. Yeah, I'm pushing
Yeah.
60. Yeah.
He's 31 and he's like, man, Jeff can throw some hands. Like you could tell he was like excited about it, but also like fuck. Like I don't know if I should do this again. And I know you guys were just
you
messing
wouldn't
around.
want Quan
but-
Lee to get a hold of you, man. Quan Lee would suplex you on your head and be over.
Yeah.
I
Hey,
can
we
tell
got
you
Michael
that right now.
Foster.
He's very, very good at Tayatoshi. That's his throw. He can knock you down.
Let's welcome to the stream, Pastor Michael Foster. Hey, woman, brother. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys,
What's
Yeah.
up?
how's it going? Thought I'd hop on real quick before I get to work on the woods, clearing out some brush.
Yeah, man.
Right.
Did you get to watch any of the show or you just popped in a second ago?
I was watching the last 4 minutes. Am I at?
Okay. Yeah, then. So while you're on here, what's your thoughts on the event? You've seen it evolve since 2020, so you've got to see the Triple 21 Summit evolve over a couple of years now. What were your thoughts, and what did you see change?
Well, it's definitely matured. I guess you guys have probably said that. Just the level of quality and speaker. You know, it's not these. It's just guys that actually are doing things, building things. I like that. It's much more mature in the content. I heard you guys talking about Zan.
Mhm.
Yeah, you get an older, wiser guys that are in the fight. Guys like Jeff, Steve, you've been around a bit, and so just everyone thinks that it's the same, like how to get laid sort of talk. I don't think I heard any of that. I heard how to take a stand for your fellow man, how to defend your children, how to get your life back on the rails when you've been derailed by things. So overall, it just was a really good, mature experiences. To me as a Christian, it was what was really crazy was just the amount of morality that is in line with Scripture being promoted for different reasons. Not because everyone's a Christian, but there's folks just saying like, yeah, you don't want to have sex outside of marriage. You get stuck with a kid that's not yours, or not be sure if you're if it's your kid or not, and just a lot of wisdom. It's just good. It was good as always. There's no drama. I said last year was really chill. You remember thinking that, but this year somehow was even chiller. So, and it was a good time. Good to have new guys there, bringing in some fresh thoughts, materials, contributions. The panels were pretty fantastic this year, especially. And Elliot kept taking shots at me for being biblical, and I returned the favor. And then Jeff tried to take us down some crazy, deep philosophical road, and we all said, "No, we're not doing that today, Jeff. We don't think." I'm not worried about Jeff's hands, right? His hand speed doesn't scare me. It's like when he starts going down some of that stuff, I'm like, man, I know my stuff, but I don't know if I can hang with Jeff on this always. So.
Well, one of the things too, Paul had mentioned earlier was like after dinners, and the dinners are awesome too. But when the dudes are sitting around and smoking cigars and drinking whiskey, one thing that I do is I just kind of sit there and listen. I mean, I looked at like the one evening sitting there with Paul Caldwell, Ian Smith, and Michael Foster, and listening to their conversations and experiences. To me, just sitting back and listening was just really cool. You know,
it's funny you bring that up, Tony. I thought this was probably going to be my last year for a little bit. I'm just so busy right now, like with starting churches. Like I'm working on my third church in 2 years already. So, and hope to get about 20 done in the next 5 to 10 years. But it was that conversation sitting there with those guys that I called my wife up and I said, where else can I go have these conversations with these men? Right. Where else can I have influence with influencers? A lot of young men look up to Paul, and Paul has some salt in his background, right? He's seen some rough things. And when you've actually walked a rough road, it's pretty easy to spot fakes. So it's not surprising to me that Paul has just been savage with all the frauds out there. But a lot of the things he has to say to young men is here's how to avoid some of the stuff I did. Here's how to be tough and actually get things done. So these young men are listening to Paul, and I don't really, Paul, you got a Gumroad class?
What?
A Gumroad class? See, that answers a question right there.
I don't even know what that is.
Paul's not.
He
He's,
probably told me to get one though.
yeah, Paul's out there just giving away wisdom. Just like this is why I was telling a friend of mine that the manosphere is not going away as long as there's young men that need help and older men that want to offer it. And obviously, there's a lot of parasites out there. But sitting there listening to Paul talk and Ian being very transparent about mistakes in his own life, and
Yeah, that was something I was surprised at, and
it made me respect him way more. It did.
Yeah.
Like, are you just a big meathead or what?
yeah, that's why I was sitting back and listening that one evening and just kind of enjoying what you guys were talking about. And I'm thinking, you know, I told other guys that where can you get this? You can't get it anywhere. Where can you hear these guys' personal experiences? Maybe some things they wouldn't even talk about online.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
It was good. That's
love
what I live for. I love those conversations.
Tony, Michael was saying, or no, excuse me, Michael. Tony was saying a few minutes ago. I don't know if you heard it, but he was very impressed with the church service that you and Brian did on Sunday morning. I don't know if you heard those comments, but how did
I
that
heard a
go?
little bit. Yeah. So what Brian and I decided to do was tag team it and say, look, this is why you should be in a church, and this is some of the things that should be happening in a church. What people don't understand is folks at the Manosphere, at these conferences at the 21 Summit, they're open, they're considering, they're thinking about things, they're here to weigh ideas against. So like I always tell everyone that 21's a forum, right? It's we put a lot of people on stage talking about a lot of different things. The only thing that's shared amongst all of us that's required is that we're for positive masculinity and we are against the feministic spirit of our age, right? We're against everything we teach has that in mind. But beyond that, it can be a pretty misfit toys, right? It can go a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
But so what we wanted to do is tell these guys, like, here's how we did it. So I got up, I did half, and then Brian did the other half, and then we sang Amazing Grace together because we figured people would know that, and most of them did. And it was kind of beautiful. It was like to sit down with these folks, and you know, I didn't know a good Presbyterian church to go, but I thought, you know, I'm willing to do a kind of workshop here to walk them through what should be in a liturgy and a worship service, and I got 5 people I'm trying to help find a church that came there,
cool.
Trying to help them connect. And
I heard the singing through the walls. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's new this year. I don't remember the singing last year.
Well, Brian is a talented worship leader. I'm not scared to sing a cappella, but it's not my strong suit, you know. But Brian did a good job, and it was good to have Sauvé there. Sauvé's he's really quick with it, right? He's very quick with his thoughts and his ability to interact on panels. I think he really pushed a lot of people's buttons in a good way. Got their juices stirring. I thought this year's religion panel was superior to last year's, and I thought last year's was pretty good. Yeah. But yeah, overall, it's just another conference. You know, I catch a lot of grief for this conference, and so at times I do ask myself, is all the grief worth it? And so my contrary nature wants to do it just because other people are telling me I can't.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to do it just to frustrate them, you know. But there is a bell curve of diminishing returns. But again, it's just good people interacting. I feel like we're seeing things go a direction. It was interesting watching the Politico guy try to figure out what this was.
Yeah. Right.
I had lots of conversations with them. Who knows how I'm going to be depicted in this article. He's got enough of my words to make me say anything. But I was just trying to like have a conversation with them. And I was like, so is it what you thought? He's like, well, at times, but at other times, no. And I always tell like my friend, like Brian, who came, I was like, what do you think? He's like, it's amazing. Right. He was amazed by the conversations and the freedom and all that. So I think there's just an idea of what it is because people want to form snap judgments. They really, it's such a zero-sum game in people's heads. They think if you're for men, you have to be against women. right? As if there's a zero sum game with, and that's not what's going on at all. I thought 22 was good. There's always that one woman that comes, God bless her, that walks up to ask a question, and it's not a question, and she just goes on for a while.
She becomes a speaker.
She does. Yeah. And last year I said you're allowed to walk to that mic if you have a real question. I was nice this year though.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I loved it, man. I love having you. My goal at the events is now I have a lot of goals at the events and missions, and I try to outline these. But on a basic functional level, I'm trying to build the best event in the world for men, for fathers, and for women, and then bring that all together into one summit. That's to me the explicit, like, basic functional goal of what I'm doing. And so I appreciate you coming out to the events, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I want to make the events so good that you don't ever want to leave. Like, I love it. It's amazing. Anthony's kind of an asshole, but I love it. That's what Paul said on his thing. It was hilarious. We can pull it up, actually. I should have read this earlier. Here it is. After meeting this dude, 21 Convention and Anthony Johnson, this is from Paul Caldwell on his channel about a week and a half ago. 21 Convention and Anthony Johnson. After meeting this dude in person, I proudly stand beside him in this fight against the vaginal cowards and losers who insist on taking advantage of men and boys and constantly spend time preaching incel gospel. Anthony Johnson might be an asshole, but he's a good man who truly cares about the state of masculinity in the manosphere. Sometimes the world doesn't need a hero, it needs a monster. ADJ is that monster to frauds and cowards, and I gladly stand with him in this fight. He goes on endorsing the event, talking about it. But I appreciate that, Paul. And it just kind of reminds me of some of the stuff Michael was bringing up here, too. I love it.
Well, guys, I just want to hop on and say thanks for having me again.
Sure.
Really grown to appreciate all you men. And I do think it's true. And I do think that you've got the crass, vulgar PT Barnum side of you on Twitter. But anyone that meets you in person knows that that's you being a showman. That's not how you are. You do care about these men, and you care about the women that come there, and you don't really put up with any nonsense. And so we'll just let the gospel keep converting all you guys, and we'll solve that in time. No, I know you're gonna start preaching your objectivism. Fine. But anyway, all right, brothers. Good talking to you. And
love you, brother. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks for hopping on, Michael.
Yep.
Talk soon. Love that guy.
I really like him. He's just a really good guy.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting all your guys' speeches done. I think this year they all came out, like you guys are saying, more professional, even more mature, just more powerful, though. That's what I'm getting when I saw Jeff's speeches. Number one, I don't see all the speeches. It's not even possible. But I always try to make sure I have an eyeball literally on each speech, at least for like 1 or 2 minutes. That's why you see me hopping around. I'm checking to make sure everything's going smooth, and then I'm also checking the content. I want to get a visual memory of what was being said and what you looked like on stage. And Jeff's in particular, I think because you suited up and then you doubled down on the content, the intensity of it.
Yes.
I think it's going to come out really, really good. And even last year's content, as you know, did zillions of views on YouTube. Right. So I'm gonna edit this shit, and we're gonna get 10 million fucking views on this, and it's gonna make everyone really upset. Like Michael was talking about. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that people, they look at the content, they look at the event, never mind the content later, but they have an agenda and a bias. And Michael called that like a zero sum kind of view of it, which is stupid. But when you actually go to it, all that goes away. There's no room for that. And I think it's what he referred to with the reporter as well, the Politico guy. That guy was a real reporter who came in with kind of his own agenda, obviously, to do an article, whatever way it's going to go, but also a preconceived notion of what the event was. And then a lot of it had nothing to do with that. He's just like, his brain was kind of scrambled by that, kind of fried, trying to figure it out. I heard he was like breaking pens, writing down notes during my speech because of the shit I was saying. Yeah,
he definitely was,
which is hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, some of the topics that we're approaching now are more difficult. In some sense, we've exhausted sort of the simple, obvious stuff, and we're working on the hard problems now. And that's something I think we'll see in future sessions, that we'll start focusing on really hard issues that we've kind of avoided just because they're so difficult. One of them is what I tried to focus on was, well, how do you if you think of this as an ideological conflict, right, between sort of these gay feminist forces in the West, how do you map that out? How do you map that battlefield out? And how would you know how to deploy your forces on the battlefield? And what is the model for that will work? And I'm struggling through that. Next year, hopefully I'll have more detail on that and some more things that we could talk about. But everybody's working on much harder problems too than we have in the past. So I think there's a kind of a discursive quality to the event where people, the speakers themselves, are learning from the event. I know that's true for me.
Yeah, for sure. You know what we're doing too now is it seems that men are trying to stop a ball from rolling that we should have stopped a long time ago.
Yes.
You know, and that's the problem, because, you know, I've got dudes, and it's kind of funny. I almost made a video because after I posted the post about Anthony, I had a couple of dudes come in on the comments there, and one of these dudes actually spent his own money to do a criminal background check on me and try to, you know, castigate who I am as a man over some shit I didn't even know existed. It was a fake ass lawsuit that I supposedly had with my brother, and it was when he died, and his lawyer was trying to figure out where all of his stuff was that he had titles to, and I had some factors and shit. And so it was filed, and then it was no case. There was no case. But this person got in the comments, and I was like, wow. At first, it made me mad, but then it made me realize, you know what, dude, you are dealing with a bunch of vaginal little bitches that are coming from these different camps, the Bullfrog camp, the Homo Tomasi camp, the Funky and Fresh Flip-Flop camp. You got all the dudes that we've thrown rocks at, justifiably so, and you can tell who they come from. They've got the black pill losers that think there's some cool dudes in some of these spaces, but most of them are fucking losers, man. And you can tell where they came from. And at first it made me mad, and I made a video, and then I always watch my videos back. And if they make me cringe, I don't release it. That one made me cringe because I got mad. This dude tried to use my brother's death and something he had no idea about. And then it made me, you know, in the same moment I was angry, my angelic voice came in and said, listen, dude, if the devil leaves you alone, you're in trouble. Right now, because of what you're doing, you are going to have these demonic little cunts test you. You're going to have these dudes test you and try to bring that person that you're trying not to be out. And then it made me almost laugh, because there's a whole bunch of people, and it's almost like these young dudes, you can't blame them because society's ruined them. We got ruined. I'm 52. And when I was going through, you know, my sexual stuff as a teenager and a young man, it was so easy. And I remember when I was younger, the elders were like saying, don't do that. That's bad. Don't do it before marriage. And they got easy, and we took advantage of it. We dogged girls out. We lied to them. We told them we liked them. We told them we loved them. We ghosted them. We did all that stuff. And then it created single moms. It created a bunch of stuff. And now we're dealing with these kids now. We're old men now. Me and Jeff, I mean, shit, we're old. And Tony, we're all old now. So I got grandkids now. And so I'm looking at this. I go, okay, I screwed my stuff up. I know for a fact I did. And so what we're dealing with is we've got a participation trophy generations. We've got the social media generations. We've got generation after generation of really after Gen X, they've started getting vaginal, more and more vaginal. So we are at critical mass now, and we've got to figure out how to deploy the troops. We've got to figure out how to build the troops. And that's part of what fired me up with Elliot. You know, we were talking about doing a camp on my property, but when I got back, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it for fathers and sons, because a lot of fathers didn't have a crucible to go through. So they're vaginal and they don't even know it. They're moving, and they made their sons weak. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to get the fathers and the sons and put them through hell to where the dad gets a baptism as well as the kid. And that's still trying to take a chink out of a redwood tree. We are in critical mass, and we're trying to stop this ball from crushing our society. And there's not a whole lot of dudes with their hands up, and that's why this is so critical. All the pickup game and trying to get laid and all that shit, to me, That's not what we need to be doing. We need men and boys to harden up back in the, I'm not even saying biblical, just have some morals, just have some personal guidelines that we didn't have. I mean, I know I didn't have it. It took me until my 40s to realize how wrong my 20s were. And now trying to tell these young dudes where all the music and all the society is saying, be as disgusting as you want to do. You know, we got the WAP, we've got all this stuff. And now we're trying to tell dudes, put your dick back up. It's not a good thing. They're like, shit, man, Cardi B said it's messed up. And we're trying to stop this. We're trying to stop a ball of passion, a ball of lustful passion. We're trying to stop that. And that is, man, I think that's a hell of a fight. You know what I mean? I think that is it's equivalent to Sodom and Gomorrah when you look at what we're doing to our children, what we're doing with women, with men, training, all of that stuff. We are in a crazy spot, and now we're trying to say, whoa, we need to stop this train.
Yeah,
we've got a hell of a fight in front of us, dude.
One of the things that Steve said is, it took me a while to understand this, and it's about masculinity. Tribes and groups are good, but Steve always says stand on your own square. And I really, really like how he says that. I don't know if Steve, if you can kind of explain what that means, but it took me a while to like, all right, Steve stands on his own 2 feet and his own 10 toes like I do. Doesn't need anybody to back him up. And I think that's an important part of masculinity. Okay.
No, I think tribes are good, but I want people to become their own tribe first. You know, you got to be your tribe of yourself. But like Paul was saying, a lot of these kids don't have any kind of a father figure. And, you know, all the stuff you're saying is awesome. But the problem they're going to have with a lot of kids is that they still, I mean, okay, they're going to get a thrust of manhood, which is great. But because they're around Paul, which is a man, they're going to get that from Paul, not their father. So then when they leave Paul, they're going to go back to dad, you know, or if dad is there or not. So, but but standing on your squares on all fours, it's like some street language, but it's just that, you know, the thing about a man is that he doesn't let anything bend or break him. And if it's a problem, it's going to be handled behind closed doors and people won't even know what's happening, you know, because you can't, I mean, you know, if you're a real man, you can't threaten and do the things you really going to do to somebody because everything's out in the front, you know. So, but
well, that reminds me, Steve. That reminds me of Bullfrog mindset. And I eventually got so busy I forgot about this dude. But early on, I was like, man, I kind of hope this guy shows up. I'm excited to see what the fuck happens if he does whatever kind of shit show. Yeah. And then of course he didn't, which was sad. Yeah, but that's someone who talked all this shit online, you know, on video, and then did nothing about it.
He should. You know what would have made him a true whatever, his baby bullfrogs, his tadpoles, if he would have showed up with his cameras and walked in and said, "I'm here. Who wants that smoke?" You know what I mean? Like most dudes would have said, "Man, we're in public, well, you know, such and such," and he would have. The chances are relatively high he could have got away with that. I say probably not, but chances are relatively high he could have got away with that. If I'm so stupid to challenge a bunch of dudes and say, yeah, if you don't do this, you're a pussy. If I don't show up where I know they're gonna be, I'm calling a whole sum of the dudes out. I know where you're at. If I don't show up there and try to prove what I said online in real life, then I'm 100% made out of pussy. And that's what he is. He did all that shit. And then even after the fact, even after the event passed, his little baby tadpoles, how come you didn't fight Bullfrog? Like, dude, how come he didn't show up? Why didn't he show up to the event? You know what I mean? Like to me, it's that simple. You talked all that shit. Come get what you want. Come get. So what
listen,
you want.
Bullfrog. I call you bullshit instead of Bullfrog. Listen, bullshit. You ain't a bullfrog sitting on a lily pad. You're a pile of shit sitting on a lily pad. So I just talk shit to you. So in the state of Texas, I can't call self-defense now when you attack me. So just come to Texas. Texas is a consent state, bitch. In Texas, if you consent to the force and I consent to the force, we can beat the fuck out of each other under any rules we want. The only thing we can't do is kill each other. Okay? So you just come to Texas. We got 3 boys here, right here from Texas. You just come to Texas, consent to the force. And I'm calling out your bullshit lily pad, motherfucker. Come on down here and talk shit to me, man. Come on down here. I live in Flower Mound, Texas. I'm easy to find online, bitch. You just gotta come here.
Or we can just
Come here,
facilitate it in
consent
my
to the
gym.
force.
We
Come and
can- we
consent to the force. I'll do it with weapons too. You want sticks? You want blades? Whatever you want. It's legal in Texas as long as you don't kill each other. Bring it. Fuck you.
And we can do it at my gym too, because I know the police here. We can bring them in. They can watch it. We can film it. It'll be excellent. It won't be no Jake Paul shit. All you'll get is that ass whoop. That'll be it. You know what I mean? Like it's really that simple. But you know what he'll do is he'll thump on his chest, on his little deal, his little.
I'm tired of this shit, man.
little
Don't fucking
tadpoles
call
will
me
flip
out,
flap
man.
and do all
Online.
this
What
shit.
the fuck is that?
It's but also what on the stand on your square, what that also means in the same tone means stay in your lane. You stand on your square, you stay on your square. You step out of your square like bullfrog / bullshit did. Now you got dudes that might on site your ass just because you did some bullshit. You know what I mean? And
It's so feminine, man. It's so effeminate. Like, okay, you got some beef with Anthony Johnson. You know, fucking go for it.
Yeah.
You guys get it on. Whatever. What's that shit got to do with me, motherfucker? I don't know
Right.
you.
right.
What the fuck are you calling me out? But I ain't going to California because California is not a consent state, motherfucker.
No, man, you
Cross
get off
the
the plane in
fucking border
California, you're going to
And
jail.
consent to the force, and we'll do it.
Yeah, one thing it comes to mind is when this was all going on initially, and then I let it go, and then he brought it back up, whatever, the whole little shit show before the event. I never asked anyone to stand and fight for me. I never, kind of like Steve's saying, I stand on my own 2 feet. And I told John that in private, you know, over text when we were still talking at that point. This was like August or something back then. I don't even know at this point. It's been such a long fucking year of bullshit like this. But I never asked anyone. I never would. You know, if this guy really wanted to fight me, like Tony kept telling him, Tony told him this. You really want to fight Anthony, go to Orlando. I don't know about the laws in the state for consent and this and that. But, you know, independent of that, if he really wanted to show up to my front yard or somewhere in Orlando, I would fight this guy. And he was too much of a pussy to do anything.
We're not women, right? You know, if somebody doesn't like somebody else, it's not like, you know, all my friends have to hate all his friends. I mean, that's fucking woman bullshit, man.
Hey, but
It's high school
usually the
cheerleader
space, though.
shit.
That's how this space is that way.
extremely effeminate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in this red pill space. That like all the Rolo's little homos are supposed to hate all of Anthony's people. You know, and to me, I stand on the side of truth. You know what I mean? Like if that dude would have never said anything about all of us speakers, that's between him and
in
Anthony.
that space. Like I don't even know. I didn't even really know that guy.
Yeah.
I don't even know him. I don't. I've never even been to his channel. Like, I mean, no offense to him or anything. I mean, maybe he's doing good stuff. I honestly don't know. All I know is he said he's going to whip my ass if I'm friends with Anthony and go speak at a conference. Well, fucking come do it. Come to Texas.
Yeah. It would have been wild if he showed up. It's that's why I was kind of sad that he didn't, because like who the fuck knows what would happen. But anyway, it actually brings
the Florida self-defense laws. So I mean, you know, it's not a consent state, but you know, if we call it a sporting event, it's legal.
Yeah. But it brings to mind for me the whole year.
Nobody gets caught. Nobody gets caught. You know what I mean? Like
Right on.
somebody would have to call the
That's
police.
a big parking lot out back.
Uh-huh.
Well, like I had said, I think I mentioned that to you, Jeff, is that, you know, he had threatened people. I want to meet you in the ring. And anybody knows anything about combat sports, 2 guys that can't fight looks like 2 girls slap fighting. So that's pretty much what it would have been. So it's like real world experience and real world battles are a lot different.
Anybody who's ever been in a real fight would have never said some dumb shit like that, because you're putting out shit so wild. There's always somebody that can beat your ass down. Nobody says dumb shit like that unless they've actually never been in a fight.
Yep. Bingo.
And I don't know if the listeners know about Tony, but Tony will take your ass down with a Soto Mekikomi and choke your ass out with a baseball choke fast you can blink an eye.
Hey, woman.
Guaranteed.
So it brings to mind, though, I was talking to Elliot Hulse about this a week before the convention. He had like a barbecue at his house, and we were just there for a couple hours, smoking cigars, kind of chilling out. And he loves the, in a way, I think I'm characterizing his opinion right. It's not what he does, but he appreciates the combativeness that I do with a lot of these frauds and shit. And he called me, it was amusing, I was dying laughing. He called me a bullshit magnet in terms of this kind of shit getting drawn to me for some reason. But my response was simple, and it's part of it might be the hyperbole that Michael Foster's talking about. I use online, the PT Barnum kind of stuff. I just love trolling and triggering people, very much like Trump does.
Yeah.
I very much admire his style, his brazen style of upsetting millions of people. But I told Elliot, and I think part of the reason this happens is that I'm just central to the conventions because I'm the one organizing them. And it's not like a podcast or something that's just digital. It's very physical. And because of that, the relationships are physical. And that's why they're beneficial. And that's why we have a lot of fun. And that's why we learn a lot. Even speakers, you come away, you get educated, you learn. You don't even, Paul was brand new this year. He didn't really know what to fully expect. And you walked away, empowered from it, like sincerely. And you were like, holy fuck, you didn't expect that. On top of having a good experience, meeting expectations or whatever. But I think it's the physicality of what 21 Summit is. That's why I call it the beating heart in the manosphere, because it's the one event that's been beating a drum every year for 16 years. And there have been plenty of other events. I know of like 10 to 15 that you can go through, but they fizzle out for whatever different reason. I know some of the founders, not all of them are bad guys, but they would pop up, they last for 1, 2, or 3 or 4 years, and then they kind of fizzle out. So there's never been this consistency to the physicality of it. And I think that's why people end up picking fights with me. And sometimes I pick fights with other people, but that's really rare. John Simons is like the exception to the rule that I don't start shit. With that guy, I had started shit because I didn't like what he was doing. And I thought it was a really bad example for men and very hypocritical. And it was pissing me off because no one would call it out. It's like everyone saw it, but no one wanted to say anything and confront him. And I was like, no, it's gay. That needs to be confronted. Anyway, it kind of highlights the whole year of just dealing with shit like that, from the Jesse Lee stuff to the Sonmez stuff and whatever else. But that's part of cleaning up. That's part of, Paul, you have like 39, 40 acres you manage. It's a lot to manage. You got to pull weeds. You got to fucking cut the grass. You got to do this. You got to chop this fucking tree down. You got to take care of a space. And if you don't do it, nobody else does, it's going to turn to fucking shit. That's the basic reason I want to keep the space healthy and move it forward and mature it, which ultimately is, I think, what we see at the events. And you guys see that very in your face. And I think Tony in particular, you've seen it for so many years. Maybe you've seen that, progression from year to year to year. But yeah, it's a ton of fun. I love seeing you guys in person, man. I wish you guys all lived in Florida instead of Texas, man. No offense to you Texans. Tony gets it.
I do. Absolutely.
Florida's too hot, man. Florida to Orlando is like where Steve lives. I can only tolerate Houston for a weekend, man. Then I got to get back up here.
Houston's rough.
My nice shit. Houston's hard, man.
Before we close out today's show, too, I wanted to show here it is. So there is a big Politico article coming out, and we should maybe talk about that because that's going to be Politico, as I understand it, is so big that it's part of like the Associated Press pool, which I studied a lot about when we went viral in the news in 2020. And there's basically a level of media like the New York Times and New York Post and all this shit that gets tracked by like every other paper in the country. And when you hit something that big, it tends to spiral or it snowballs into other papers. Yes, it can. Because then everyone just prints off the fucking article and then they read it on podcasts and it gets cited and other stuff. It's interesting how that network of media, fake news or whatever, fake news or not, how it operates. But before the Politico article comes out, we do have 2 articles from the Epoch Times, and I was happy to have them at the event. It was a woman who was interested in Jeff. She had interviewed him before the event, and then she, I guess through that or something, she found our events and asked for a press pass. I love the Epoch Times. I have zero problem with these people. So this is one of them that came out, which I thought was really funny. They highlighted Jennifer Molesky at the 22 convention, which was interesting. Anti-feminist women's conference wants to make women great again. Being more feminine will help ladies get wifed up and knocked up, according to website. Then it just kind of goes into it, but it's very positive. And
well, yeah, because that's what all women want to be: wifed up and knocked up. That's what they all want.
Pretty much. I think that's sincerely at least 90% of women. That's what they want.
Yeah.
They just don't want to admit it. Yeah. Then so it's just for me as the founder, it was nice to have a positive media report for once.
Yeah.
Because usually it's just people bitching endlessly. So did you guys get to read this? Did you have any thoughts on the Epoch Times?
Yeah, I got to read it. And they did I was on the cover of Epoch Times just after this.
Yep. I'll pull it up actually right now.
Okay, yeah. The the Epic Times is dedicated to fighting the culture war, and many of their journalists are completely on board with the idea that it's father absence that has caused almost 90% of the problems we see today. Problems with children, problems with the schools, problems with voting patterns, problems with demographic patterns in the big cities. Just about every problem is because men basically are absent. And they also have an interesting take that they don't blame men. They don't give this man up message. What they're looking at are systemic incentives that are preventing men from doing that. What kind of risks are men facing? What kind of problems they face in the legal system and so forth. And they're very oriented towards that. So, I mean, the 21 conference is really right in their sweet spot. And they're also implicitly Christian, not explicitly Christian. So being welcoming to Christians, even though the event isn't a Christian event, but being welcoming to Christians is a big deal to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, to me, that's just part of being American. Like, I grew up in the 90s, as you guys know, I was born in 88. And to see Christians get pushed out of public spaces and dialogue, it's amazing and it's alarming for any number of reasons. At bare minimum, because it means people like me are next in line,
100%.
or there's this catastrophic cultural decay that is going to spiral eventually into some sort of kinetic problem, economic collapse, monetary collapse, civil war. Who knows? Like, there's a number of possibilities, and none of them are good. So I do take pride in sincerely providing an open platform for different ideas. And I think that's part of what shocks people when they go to like these reporters. Like, they don't really expect that. And even if they're told, like Brian Save, the pastor Michael was talking about, the speaker, he was told what the event was like from Michael. And I think he trusted Michael sincerely, but I don't think he really believed it until he saw it. He might speak for himself on this, but it's like when you finally see 21 Summit and I welcome you to the stage, you know, usually anyway, and all that, and then you just say whatever you want and no one's trying to control you. There's no demands to not say this or that. I'm not like, you know, twisting your arm like, hey man, how about you leave that topic alone? That, to me, I hate that. And I would hate that as a speaker in your shoes. And that's how I think about it empathetically. If I was in your shoes, what would I want? Freedom. I want to speak my mind. I want to use my mouth and my tongue the way that I want. That's the sickest thing to me at all. And I love that Elon Musk bought Twitter and he's moving in that direction. But the control of speech is so sick to me. You know, even at a conference like this, a conference organizer like trying to dictate to you what you can say. It's like, motherfucker, you don't own my mouth. You don't own my tongue. You're gonna control what I do with my fucking teeth. Get the fuck out of here. Like, that's how I think about it. I'm like, what is the most literal physical demands these people are making of me? And whether I'm typing with my fingers or using my tongue and my mouth, this control, it's like slavery. It's like, fuck you, man. I'm going to say what the fuck I want. And because I have that attitude for myself, I want you guys to have that freedom too. And I'm really proud that I can give that to you guys. If it's the last free speech fucking public speaking platform on the planet, you know, so be it. I think about that sometimes with TED Talks. Like, it's kind of the standard for public speaking at this point. Big prime time. I want to be a TED speaker, blah, blah, blah. Right. But really, to me, it's this global homo feminist, you know, anti-masculinity conference that they would never let any of you guys speak at the conference.
Never,
at least not about anything important anyway. They would just control it and whitewash it.
A number of people tried to get me to do a TEDx talk at a university here in Texas, and on the transgender issue from the other side, and they absolutely would not allow me. They wouldn't even accept an application.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I believe it, man. I believe it.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you
mean,
guys have
that's
any?
how far the culture's come, right? Like, it's okay to advocate for taking boys and cutting their balls off, and that's the ultimate emasculation of our society, right? Literally castrating little boys. It's okay to talk about that, but you can't talk about making them into men.
Yep.
How sick is that?
It's evil.
To me, you're going to destroy their society.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And that's, you know, that's what Steve was saying a while ago. That is the hardest part about trying to help. If they do come across a man, and a man it gives them some help, they leave. They have to leave, and they have to go back to wherever they came from. They have to go back to what broke them. I just had that happen with one of the kids that I've been training for probably a year and a half. He's an undersized kid. Wants to be a basketball player, but they forced him to play football.
Mhm.
And the new coach brought some thugs with him, some Dallas boys. And I saw the kids. Dad told me that these kids were hanging out with the son, and I told him, man, I hadn't seen the kid probably in about 3 months. And in 3 months, he just caught himself a fucking felony for selling his mom's Adderall at school. Had he been around me, I would have told him about those dudes that his dad allowed him to hang out with, that allowed him to influence himself with, because I could tell those dudes were, man, when you've been a fuck up, you can see them. And I saw it. And I told
Yeah,
Dad,
man.
his dad was so worried about his son being popular and being accepted by these athletes that he put him out there. And it is hard because
Man.
when you come across a male who's broken, you can charge him up, but if it doesn't stick, it won't stick. And that is hard. That is a hard deal.
Yeah.
Wow. Terrible story.
I want to get you guys closing thoughts on the event. Do you think that people watching should go next year? What are your thoughts on people, like actually men, mostly men anyway, some women as well. But what are your thoughts on men and women showing up to the events? People complain, they criticize this and that. It's too long, it's too much money, it's this and that, whatever. I'll just watch the videos. Like, you guys have all seen the speeches you give them. I mean, you see other, your fellow speakers, you see your own videos. Like, what's that difference, for example, between the videos and actually being there and experiencing everything like live in your face?
Well, I'll go first. I think that it's just real world experience, man. You have to go out and talk with people. Stop LARPing on the internet, man. Get rid of your avatar. Stop being a loser. I mean, just simple, plain and simple. And I do understand that some people do have to protect their identities in this community, in this world. But, when Anthony first puts out tickets, I mean, literally 2 guys can go for $1,000 for 5-6 days. So how can you beat that? So get your tickets. And if you're interested in being a volunteer, just reach out when the tickets are put out. And like I say, you'll have basically like a backstage pass and, be part of the production, which is always a good time for sure. So,
Yeah.
I'll go. Too much money. They say too much money, but they spend money on Jordans. Too much money, but they waste money on clothes to try to get women. Too much money, they just waste money. Don't know how to invest money. Investing is all about taking your money to invest in yourself, to learn more about yourself instead of sitting around caking and just watching things. And now there lies a problem. They can start right now. They have a year from now to go ahead and save whatever money they need to save. If they actually really want to be a part of something greater, they will get Uber, they'll go Lyft, they'll get a second job and do it. That's what men do. They find a way to get around other men, and they don't make excuses. So it just shows what you actually are to yourself if you don't want to do this. But Anthony, I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the men on here, and I appreciate what you're doing for men. And I know people don't like that. They just don't want to see you win, but who wants to see men win nowadays? So you can tell that everybody doesn't want you to win. But for you guys out there that are listening to this thing, it's up to you what you want to do. These men on here ain't gonna beg you to do shit. They're gonna say, you know what, are you gonna do that shit or not? Fuck off. You know what I mean? That's what men do. So get off your lazy fucking ass and do something.
Hey, woman.
You pretty much said what I was going to say. People always talk about what they can't afford. I don't have the money to do that. But then you sit back and you watch what they buy, what they purchase every day. It's the same way with training. I see people that are unhealthy, fat men with titties telling me, oh man, I just can't, I can't afford it. But the motherfucker's got a Red Bull and some other shit in his hand at the store every morning. If you really want to level up, I think that it's essential that you do something like this convention. And I don't know any other convention that's got men that speak the way that the men that I heard at this one did. Like I said, I didn't know what to expect, and listening to the guys speak and then speaking with them in person, I think one of the most fundamental things that young boys need to do is make sure that the person that you're listening to is authentic. And there's so many people, like Tony said, that are LARPing, or they're projecting some bullshit and they're showing up in a certain way that they don't really show up in life. If you really, like, if you're watching anybody that's on this panel, if you're watching anybody that's in this group online, the benefit of being able to sit with that man and ask questions, it's priceless. The ticket, maybe it costs some money, but losing over and over in life, making the same mistakes over and over in life, or going down a path that you're unsure of when you could get guidance from people that have already trod that path, that's important. It's very important. And like I said, it doesn't matter where you go, but I think that you should go somewhere where the men are pushing you forward, not telling you how to put yourself in a trap for this society. A lot of the red pill shit is showing you how to trap yourself. It's good to have. I don't know who said it, but somebody said that it was a course, not a degree. That was one of the most profound statements that I heard one of the men at that summit say, because that's all it is. It's an entry point. It is not a graduation degree. And so understanding that life's fucked up, understanding that there's pitfalls, traps, and all that, that's base knowledge. You have to have that intel before you attack. But once you have it, you have to attack. And if you don't surround yourself with men that are attacking, then you're going to be a spray and prayer, man. You're just going to sit there behind your wall, sending it over the fence, hoping that it sticks, and it's not going to work that way. So I would say if you really want to level up, like I leveled up and I spoke the thing. So I think it's not a sales pitch. I'm just telling the truth, man. It is highly beneficial to anyone that's not comfortable where they are.
You know, my view is, you know, I don't believe in leadership styles. There's one way to lead people, and that's to lead by example. All leadership style stuff's all bullshit. Either you're doing it, people follow you doing it, or they're not. The other thing is, there's not much difference between a good leader and a good follower. We don't ever talk about that. I do this exercise all the time with people. I'll get on a whiteboard. Let's list all the things we want in a good follower on our team. We go to lunch. Everybody forgets about it. And I say, let's list out all the qualities of a good leader. And then I show them the same list, exactly the same list. If you can't follow and learn by example, you can't lead. Okay? And if you can't lead, you suck as a follower. We don't need you. In fact, I'm telling you, if you're not interested in being a leader, you probably shouldn't come. You know, but if you want to be around men that can set examples for you on how to be a leader and how to make a difference in your own community and your own family, this is the place for you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because a lot of my comments responding to a bunch of, I'm not going to call them men, I'll call them males, was that you're a follower, you're not a leader. Just real simple.
Yeah, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
What I want the men attending, and I mean this sincerely, and I've said this before in maybe different words, I want these men to lead their own life. And that's what all of you and all the speakers are generally and sincerely and passionately advocating for. And that is important to me. I told Richard Grannon once before the event, actually pretty recently, not only do I not want blind followers of me or of 21 Studios or the events or whatever, I will actively make fun of you openly on my Twitter or whatever if you do that, because it's fucking stupid. It's the exact opposite. You might appreciate some sort of tactical tip or advice a speaker gave you, but if you're focused on being a blind fucking loser who just follows blindly, you've missed the point of everything that I'm doing.
You're dead. All good followers are leaders. All of them.
Yeah.
You
I
can't
follow
be
you
a
guys.
good follower if you're not a leader. It's impossible.
I've said this before, that you guys speaking at my events, the reason you're speaking is because in some way I'm following what you're saying and what you're thinking. I'm learning from you. And that to me is an act of, not of leadership, but of following. I'm a leader in organizing the events, but I'm a follower in that each one of you is an expert in some way that I'm not. You're further ahead of me, and I need to follow your lead. I'm not an expert on paternity fraud like Carnell Smith,
Right.
or you know, Jeff with you and the trans stuff and the massive battle you've been fighting in family court. You've had to educate yourself to a level I'll probably never hit, but at least I can learn from that and benefit profoundly from your negative experiences where you've had to fight for your life and fight for your sons. I don't want that to ever happen to me. And if anything ever even approaches that, I know exactly where I can go to learn from, who to learn from, and then what to do. And these men who watch your videos, it's the same thing. That's why the videos are so important. You know, it's the speeches that you guys give in person, which are amazing. Mm-hmm. These people learn from them. Literally, they're in the audience watching you live, but then we can get it to millions of people, millions of men. And then they make different decisions. They make different actions in their life. If they don't do shit with what you guys say, then it's useless. The point for me is if I can get, 1 million people or 3 million people or men or whatever to watch a video, there's like a chunk of them who are not losers, who are actually going to step the fuck up and change course in their life and take actions that are different. It might only be 10% or 20% or whatever, but who cares? That's still hundreds of thousands of men who are making different decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that's why mainstream is so scared of the manosphere and like intimidated by it, because it's motivating men to do things differently, not even just think differently, which is a good step, but actually do different shit, date different women, or don't date these women, or do this or do that with family and divorce and marriage and leading relationships and your kids and your sons and your daughters. Like, this is massive stuff. Like you said about Epic Times, they get it. They get where the deeper issues lie in our culture. And it's not like the wall and tax cuts and all this fucking like bland vanilla bullshit. It's marriage and family and divorce and relationships and dating and masculinity and femininity. That's to me where all the roots are in this whole fucking culture war of like retard shit. We have to get back to the basics because we've lost all that. End rant.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
A1.
All right. I appreciate you guys coming on today. It's been really awesome having you at the events once again. Paul, is your first time, but really happy to meet you. I mean, like super authentic, man. Yeah. So that's it for episode 177 of the Redman Group, guys. Everyone check out the description. I'll put links later to each one of their channels and websites and stuff like that. You can check out Jeff Younger on Substack, Steve on YouTube, and his website, The Man Mindset. Paul is on YouTube mostly at The War Room. And Tony, of course, is on YouTube as well and social media. Just search Tony Bruno. And on YouTube, there's two of them. He's the better looking one. The other guy, I don't know who the other guy is. I always see it though. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. You can stay on behind the scenes here. Everyone else, I'll see you probably next Saturday. If not, we'll be back to regular shows every Saturday pretty soon.
All right.
Appreciate you tuning in. Peace out.
Peace.